Let me tell you how colonialism works in 2025. No soldiers, no gun boots, no Cecil Rhodes drawing lines on maps while drunk on gin and racial supremacy. Just PowerPoint slides, sustainability reports, and a new kind of violence. One that comes with a carbon calculator and a feel good TED Talk. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. I'm DY, and this is a Kenyan week that was. Today, we're talking about how Kenya became Europe's carbon dump, how land theft got rebranded as conservation, and how same communities who fought the British for their land in the 1950s are now fighting NGOs with the same exact fucking argument. The White Highlands never went away. They just changed their mission statement. In 1952, the British called it Crown Land. In 2025, they call it carbon sequestration zones. Same theft, better branding. Welcome to green colonialism. Before we get into how Kenya is getting screwed again, let's talk about what carbon credits actually are. Because if you don't understand the scam, you can't see how elegant it is. A carbon credit is a financial instrument that allows a company, let's say an oil refinery in Texas, to keep polluting as long as they pay someone somewhere else to offset that pollution. That somewhere else? Often Kenya, specifically Kenyan land where trees can grow or where land can be protected and turned into what they call carbon sinks. One carbon credit theoretically equals to 1 ton of carbon dioxide emitted or CO2 emitted, either removed from the atmosphere or emitted because a forest wasn't cut down. Corporations buy these credits to claim they are carbon neutral. Shell keeps drilling, Delta keeps flying, Microsoft keeps running data centers that consume more power than entire countries. But on paper, they are all green. Because somewhere in Laikipia, a Maasai herder can no longer graze his cattle on land his grandfather walked on. Let me be clear. This is not about climate science. Climate change is real. It is catastrophic and we are living in it. This is about who pays the price for fixing it. Kenya contributes less than 0.1% of global carbon emissions. 0.1%. We didn't create this crisis, but we are being asked to solve it by giving up our own land. So why Kenya? And here are the 3 reasons. Number 1, we have land, lots of it, open, undeveloped, what they call or they love to call underutilized. 2, we have weak land rights, communal land, customary tenure, oral agreements. None of that shows up in a clean ledger. Thirdly, we are desperate. Our economy runs on donor dependency and debt. When a European NGO shows up with cash and the promise of green jobs, governments don't ask questions. Carbon credits aren't climate solutions. They are arbitrage. They allow the polluter to keep polluting and the dispossessed to stay dispossessed. But this time we are supposed to be grateful because, it's for the planet. It's for Mother Earth. If that sounds familiar, because it should, because the British said the same thing about the railways. Let's talk about conservancies. On paper, they sound beautiful. Community-led conservation, wildlife protection, sustainable tourism. But here's what conservancies actually is. A legal mechanism to convert communal land into privately controlled, protected areas, where grazing is restricted, movement is criminalized, and the people who've lived there for centuries become trespassers. Laikipia County, 9,700 square kilometers, some of the most fertile, strategically important land in Kenya. In the early 1900s, the British took it, called it the White Highlands, gave it to settlers, kicked out the Maasai, the Samburu, and the Pokot. After independence, we were supposed to get it back, but sadly, we didn't. Instead, it got rebranded. Settler farms became conservancies, wildlife tourism, and carbon offset zones. Community partnerships. And the Maasai still locked out, still told they are the problem, that their cattle overgraze, that they threaten biodiversity. Maasai pastoralism is not a threat to biodiversity. It is biodiversity. It's a land management system that has sustained these ecosystems for thousands of years. But that doesn't fit the Conservancy model because the Conservancy model isn't about protecting, nature. It's about commodifying it. Once land becomes a conservancy, it gets valued not for what it is or for what it grows or who it sustains, but for how much carbon it can sequester. That carbon gets turned into credits. Those credits get sold to corporations in London, New York, or Singapore. And the Maasai community, the guys that used to actually graze there, they get a community benefit package. Maybe a borehole, maybe a school that never gets teachers, maybe $3 per hectare per year, while the conservancies pull in millions. If you look at these contracts, they are 50, 75, or 99-year leases. They are written in English, not Ma or Swahili. They are signed by community representatives who may or may not have real mandate, and they are irreversible. This is the part that should make you, get enraged. In the 1950s, the British said the land is crown property. You are squatters, leave. In 2025, the conservancies say this land is a carbon asset. You are encroaching, leave. The vocabulary changed. The violence didn't. Let me show you how the money works. Because this is where it gets obscene. Step one, a carbon project gets established on Kenyan land. Could be a forest, could be a conservancy, could be mangroves on the coast. That project gets certified by an international body, the likes of Vera, Gold Standard, one of these alphabet soup validators. Step three, the project generates carbon credits based on how much carbon dioxide it is supposedly storing or preventing from being released. Step four, the credits hit the market. And this is where the magic really, really happens. A single carbon credit can sell for anywhere between $5 and $120, depending on the market and the certification. So let's be conservative. Say $20 per credit. A mid-sized conservancy in Laikipia, let's say, that has about 100,000 hectares, can generate tens of millions of credits over a 30-year contract. At $20 per credit, that's hundreds of millions of dollars. So, guess how much the community gets? 3% to 10%. If they're lucky, that is. Oftenly, it's less. And that's before administrative costs, project fees, and capacity building expenses. The Conservancy's operator takes a cut. The carbon credit developer takes a cut. The international certifier takes a cut. The broker also takes a cut. By the time it trickles down to the Samburu elder whose land this used to be, it's loose change. And here's the kicker. That land is now locked for decades under contract. Your children can't use it. Your grandchildren can't use it. If you can't you can't negotiate when you realize you've been screwed. You've sold multi-generational sovereignty for one-time payout that wouldn't buy a used Land Cruiser. This is extraction, pure and simple. It's just that instead of mining copper or drilling for oil, they are mining your land capacity to exist. And just like with mining, the profits leave. The environmental damage is left with us. And the people who lived there get nothing but a pamphlet about sustainability. If you're thinking, this sounds like colonialism, you're right. Because it is colonialism. It's just better branded. Let's do a side by side. In 1920s, the British declare Kenyan land unused and productive. Therefore, it belongs to the Crown. In 2020s, carbon developers declare Kenyan land underutilized and ecologically vulnerable. Therefore, it needs to be conserved under their management. In the 1930s, Maasai and Samburu pastoralists are moved to native reserves, smaller, drier, less viable land. 2020s, Maasai and Samburu pastoralists are pushed out of conservancies into smaller, drier, less viable land. The 1950s, the Mau Mau fighters resist land seizure. They are labeled terrorists, criminalized, hunted. In 2020s, pastoralists resist conservancy enclosures. They are labeled encroachers, criminalized, arrested for grazing. Do you see it? The borders didn't move, the power didn't shift. Only the language changed. The logic of colonialism was always this: African land is wasted on Africans. We need to develop it, civilize it, maximize it. The logic of carbon colonialism is the exact same. African land is wasted on Africans. We need to protect it, conserve it, offset it. And in both cases, the solution is the same: take the land, remove the people, so you profit. The British took the land to grow wheat and coffee for Europe. Today, they take the land to grow carbon credits for Europe. Same empire, same extraction, same lie. This is for your own, I'll put it proper, this is for your own good. Except now they bring NGOs instead of missionaries, sustainability consultants instead of district officers, and carbon contracts instead of colonial ordinances. And when the communities resist, when they take conservancies to court, when they refuse to sign, when they graze their cattle anyway, they are told that they are anti-development, anti-environment, anti-progress, which is exactly what the British said about the Mau Mau in the first place. Let's talk about the empire behind all of this, because carbon credits don't just appear. They are created by an entire ecosystem of extraction. First, you've got the NGOs, the different African Wildlife Foundation, the different ones, big conservation, multi-billion-dollar operations. They position themselves as protectors of African wildlife. But look at their boards, look at their funding, look at who actually benefits. These aren't grassroots organizations. They are corporations. And their product is access to African land. Then you've got the carbon credit developers. Companies like South Pole or Vera or Carbon Tanzania. They broker deals between communities and corporations. They take a percentage of every credit sold and they write the contracts. They control the verification. And here's the beautiful part for them: they can't lose. If the project succeeds, they make money. If it fails, they have already been paid. If the community complains, the contract has binding arbitration clauses in European courts. Good luck suing a Swiss company in Geneva when you are a Maasai elder in Kajiado. And then at the top of the food chain, you've got the corporations buying the credits, the polluters. They're not reducing emissions, they are offsetting them, which is corporate speak for: we're going to keep doing exactly what we've been doing, but we'll pay someone in Kenya to pretend we are not. This is what ESG really is: environmental social governance. Environmental, we take your land. Social, we give you a school with no teachers. Governance, we write contracts you can't escape. ESG is a moral laundering of imperial capitalism. It is how ExxonMobil gets to call itself green while drilling in the Arctic. It's how Delta gets to call itself sustainable while flying 5,000 flights a day. It's how a hedge fund gets to tell Samburu communities that their cattle are the problem. And when communities push back, the empire responds the way empires always do: with lawyers, with police, with full weight of the state. Because in Kenya, as in colonial Kenya, the law protects capital, not people. But let's be honest, this doesn't happen without Kenyan cooperation. Every carbon credit contract signed in this country has Kenyan signatures on it. Every conservancy lease has been approved by a Kenyan county government. Every eviction has been carried out by Kenyan police. Politicians are at conservancy events, ribbon cutting ceremonies. Governors, they sign deals because they get kickbacks. MPs stay silent because they get campaign donations. Cabinet secretaries approve projects because they get board seats after retirement. I've seen the paper trail. Conservancies operators donate to political campaigns. They fund county projects. They hire the governor's cousin as a community liaison. And then quietly, land laws get amended, grazing restrictions get formalized, customary land rights get ignored. And when communities take these cases to court, the cases drag for years. Because our judiciary is slow, under-resourced, and let's be blunt, sometimes even captured. The communities being displaced aren't asking for much. They're asking for the same thing the Mau Mau asked for in the beginning: the right to live on their land. And just like the 1950s, the state is telling them, no, that land is needed for something more important than your children, more important than their cattle, more important than their future. Apparently, yes, because someone in Munich needs to offset their BMW. But there's one Kenyan who deserves a special mention in this story. Someone who's turned carbon credits into a personal brand, who shows up at every climate summit with the moral authority of a continent that didn't cause the crisis, while quietly auctioning off that continent's land. President William Samoei Ruto, Africa's self-proclaimed and self-appointed climate champion. At COP27 in Egypt, November 2022, Ruto told the world, Africa is ready to be part of the solution to climate change. We have the land, we have the resources, we have the carbon sequestration capacity. Notice the language. We have the land. Not our people have land. Not communities hold the land. We have land. The state, the government, the entity that can sign contracts. Then came the African Climate Summit in Nairobi, September of 2023. Ruto's big moment. Kenya hosting the continent's climate conservation. And Ruto shows up with a pitch, not for emissions reduction, not for climate adaptation funding, not for loss and damage compensation. He pitched carbon markets. Africa holds over 600 million hectares of land with carbon sequential potential. This is an opportunity for investment, for growth, for partnerships. Partnerships? That's what we are calling it now. When the British took the land, it was a civilizing mission. When Ruto offers it up, it's climate partnership. At COP28 in Dubai, December 23rd, 2023, Ruto speaks even harder. We must leverage carbon markets to unlock Africa's potential. The global carbon markets could be worth $1 trillion by 2037. Africa must have a stake. A stake. You know what a stake means in finance? It means you are at the table. It means you are on the menu. And Ruto didn't just talk. He acted. In 2023, his government launched the Carbon Markets and Trading Initiative, created a national carbon registry, streamlined approval for carbon credit projects. Within months, new conservancies were approved in Laikipia, Kajiado, Samburu. Pastoral land suddenly became carbon sequestration zones. And communities woke up to finding their grazing lands locked under 50-year carbon contracts they never saw coming. Here's what makes Ruto's carbon romance so dangerous. He's giving it legitimacy. When the president of Kenya stands at a climate summit and says Africa is open for carbon business, he's not speaking for himself. He's positioning the entire continent. He gets praised by the international community, gets called a climate leader, gets invited to every summit. Meanwhile, the carbon cowboys are writing checks. Shell sponsors Africa Climate Summit. Microsoft announces carbon offset partnership. European carbon funds set up national Nairobi offices. And Ruto smiles for all the cameras while his government signs away communal land. In March 2024, while Ruto was in Brussels talking about green growth, Maasai families in Kajiado were being evicted from land that had just been declared a carbon offset zone. The Conservancy operators said they were encroaching. The family said they'd lived there for 4 generations. The contract signed by county officials, Ruto appointed, said the land was now protected for 75 years. You want to know the most insulting part? Ruto talks a big game about African sovereignty, about not being dictated to by the West, about African solutions for African problems. Africa will not be told what to do. We chart our own course. African agency, African ownership. And then turns around and sells pastoral land to European carbon funds. That's not sovereignty. That's subcontracting. And that's subcontracting colonialism. And here's the economic con. Ruto's government projects that carbon credits could bring in $10 billion annually by 2030. Kenya's entire national budget is about $30 billion. So carbon credits become third of government's revenue. That means government becomes dependent on carbon market, which means it becomes dependent on keeping communities off their land. Because if pastoralists graze freely, the carbon sequestration drops. If communities reclaim land, the credits get avoided. If people resist, the contracts get challenged. So the government has to choose: side with the communities and lose billions, or side with carbon markets and displace citizens. Guess which one is Ruto choosing? As recently as January 2026, at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Ruto was still selling the same line. Kenya has committed to expanding carbon markets as a cornerstone of our green economy. We are creating an enabling environment for investment. Enabling environment. You know what that means in policy speak? It means removing obstacles. And in this case, the obstacles are the people. You know, the Ma, the Samburu. Maasai communities protesting conservancy expansion? Obstacle. Samburu elders demanding contract transparency? Obstacle. Lawyers filing cases for community land rights? Obstacle. Speeds up conservancy approvals. Limits community consultation periods. And all to create Ruto's enabling environment. Let me be very, very clear about what's happening here. President Ruto is not a climate champion. He's a carbon broker. He's dressing up land dispossession as climate action. He's using the moral urgency of the climate crisis to justify the same land grabs the British justified with development. And he's doing it while claiming to speak, sadly, for Africa. He's not speaking for the Maasai people being pushed off their land. He's not speaking for the Samburu losing grazing rights. He's not speaking for the coastal communities watching their mangroves getting turned into carbon credits. He's speaking for the carbon markets. And the carbon market is speaking back with applause, with awards, and with investments. Time magazine called him a climate leader. The UN gave him a sustainability award. Bloomberg named him one of the most influential people in climate finance. And all he had to do was give away other people's land. Our grandparents fought for land freedom. Our president is auctioning it at climate summits. If that doesn't make you furious, you're not paying any attention to everything that is happening. Step 1, get African president to legitimize your land grab at a climate summit. Step 2, sign a 75-year contract while he talks about partnership and mutual benefits. Step 3, profit from African land while the president gets climate awards. And step 4, when communities campaign or complain, point to the president's speeches about how this is good for Africa. The Ruto carbon package. Because colonialism works better when you have local endorsements. Side effects may include land disposition, community displacement, loss of sovereignty, and the complete betrayal of the independence struggle. Consult your conscience before use. They used to need gunship to take African land. Now, they just need presidential endorsement. Progress. You know what hurts most about Ruto's carbon romance? Our independence leaders. They fought for land, not for rhetoric, not for symbolism, for actual physical land. Freedom fighters understood that without land, there is no freedom. Without land, you cannot feed yourself. That without land, you are always dependent on someone else's permission to exist. And now their successors stand at climate summits selling that same land while draped in the flag they died for. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a panga. But here's the thing Ruto doesn't understand or doesn't care about. The communities he's selling out, they remember. They remember what their grandparents actually fought for. They remember the emergency, the detention camps, the torture, the blood. And they are not about to let their grandchildren lose what their grandparents died for because some president wants to look good at a COP29. Let me bring this thing home. Kenya is not a carbon sink. Kenya is not a climate sponge. Kenya is not Europe's moral insurance policy either. This is a country, a sovereign nation with 55 million people who have the right to determine what happens to their land. And let me be very clear about this, land is not just dirt. It's not just an asset class. Land is power. It is where you grow food, where you raise your children, where you bury your ancestors, where you build your future. When you lose land, you just don't lose property. You lose autonomy. You lose identity. You lose the ability to feed yourself. Our grandparents understood this. That's why they fought. That's why tens of thousands of them died in concentration camps, in forests, in detention. And their grandchildren are still fighting the same battle, sadly, today. Not against the British or the British crown, against carbon credits. Here's what makes me furious. Kenya is already paying for climate change. Our droughts are longer, our floods are worse, our seasons are collapsing. Pastoralists are losing cattle, farmers are losing crops, entire communities are being displaced, not by conservancies, but by climate itself. And we didn't cause this. The West did. With 2 centuries of industrial emissions, coal, oil, gas, consumption on a scale we've never matched, they created the crisis. And now they're selling us the solution. A solution that requires us to give up again our land, a solution that allows them to keep polluting, a solution that makes them richer and us poorer. No, that's not climate justice. That is climate imperialism. And we need to call it for what it is. Because if land is the foundation of freedom, and it is, then carbon credits are the new chains. The community is resisting this. They're not anti-environment. They are not anti-climate action. They are pro-sovereignty. Community leaders at forums, they are asking for the same thing the Mau Mau asked for: the right to control their future, the right to stay on their land, the right to actually be able to say no and not get killed or get ostracized. We need to support, not with pity, not with charity, with solidarity, because the struggle for land in Kenya never truly ended. It just got rebranded. And if we don't resist this, if we let carbon colonialism becomes normalized, we'll wake up one day and realize we've lost the same land our grandparents bled for. Colonialism used to come with soldiers and rifles. Now it comes with PowerPoint slides and sustainability reports. But land theft is land theft, no matter how green the branding is. That's the Kenyan week that was. I've been your host, DY. And like we always say, receipts over vibes, always.